folks. It is I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, Lord Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the forgotten collectible card games of old. Collectible card games that have lost most of their fan base, aren't played as much anymore, don't have production from the original company that does it. They've fallen by the wayside in some way that they're no longer have the major support that you find them all over the place. Though they might still be played or sold in some places. We're continuing with the third set ever for a CCG, Vampire the Eternal Struggle, which is based upon the Vampire the Masquerade role-playing game in, of course, the World of Darkness setting. When we last left off, we were talking about actions your minions can do. We're going to finish a little bit about the general actions and talk about politics today. Because politics is important, even in vampire society. So finally, the last thing I want to mention about the basic actions is, now that you've attempted all the blocks of it, all the stealth related to it we were talking about, if all of that doesn't stop your action, you pay the appropriate costs, the action goes off. Simple as that. That's the last bit of information about actions I wanted to mention. That very last little bit of ending, you have to remember to pay the appropriate costs, and then you get your action. Let's talk about politics. Vampire politics are just as complex and ridiculous as, of course, mortal politics. They have their own rules, laws, and traditions that they reflect upon with the way that the game is played. And this comes into the actual gameplay in two different ways. The political action and the blood hunt. We will be talking about the blood hunt in a much later episode, but for now, let's talk about the political act. So to call a referendum, you have to have an ready, untapped minion. You have to tap said ready, untapped minion upon announcing that you are going to have a referendum. A referendum. And then you will announce what that referendum is, play the appropriate political card from your hand, and we've started the political action. It is important to note here that a political action is never a directed action. It is always off into space, so only your predator and your prey may attempt to block your political action. It's also important to note that a political action always has a default stealth of 1, unless it is specifically mentioned on the card. So you could actually technically have less stealth if this political action might say 0 on the card, but at default, it is 1. It is important to note the specifics of the actual referendum are never detailed until the actual referendum, the political action, is successful. So once the action is successful, then you call on the specifics of the referendum. So if the action is successful, you've paid the appropriate costs, this is when you begin the actual referendum and going over the details of that. Older cards might specifically say, during the political action, which is referring to the actual referendum. Now the referendum comes in 3 steps. Terms, polling, resolution. Terms is just that. You name the terms of the referendum, what you want this referendum to do based upon the political card you played. That's effectively what it's doing. You're naming all the terms. If there's a specific card that mentions during a political action but before votes and ballots, that you can play it now, then that card would be played at this point in time. There are some cards which mention that. Now the next part, of course, is you take the votes and ballots of all the Methuselahs that are playing. All the players. Everyone gets to vote, and there is no specific order that they get to vote in. The fact is, you can choose not to throw your vote out. It's just that the entire action finally resolves, it finally ends, when every vote has been cast or a certain amount of time goes by. Effectively, the amount of time is something that you would establish ahead of time in order for people to possibly abstain or choose not to vote. So that you could say, like, everybody has a minute to decide, or 2 minutes, depending on how you want to maybe discuss the vote even, that you can maybe try to do things in that way to convince people where to throw their votes in. That you can use your words to influence your other players. This is an opportunity for it, and to try to influence the vote a little bit there. Doesn't say you can't talk. It is also important to note, once a vote has been cast, can't be changed. So as soon as someone announces a vote, that is the way their vote goes. Now, once all the votes have been tallied up, you can find out how the resolution went. If there are more votes for the resolution passed and it goes into effect. If there are more votes against it, guess what? The resolution has failed. Nothing happens. A tie also counts as failure, and there is no effect. Now, votes and ballots are gained through a variety of means. Once a vote or ballot is gained, it has no specific way that it originally is going. You get to choose, as the one who has gained the said vote or ballot, how it goes. But when you vote as a group with all the votes or ballots that you may have. That means you're throwing all of them together in one direction, no matter regardless how many you've managed to assemble through the various means that you can assemble them. All the normal restrictions apply, and once you've cast the vote, you cannot vote. You cannot change your vote. You've chosen what you were doing. Now, the most basic way of gaining a vote, of course, is the political action card. A vote or ballot is gained through, of course, the political action card that called the referendum. That's the first way that a political action card can gain a vote or a ballot. So I played my card in order to start this one. I get a vote or a ballot. Another way is that another player may burn a political action card from their hand in order to gain a vote or a ballot. Either using the political action card to call the referendum or burning one, you could only get one vote from this combination. That means me, as the person that played the card, I couldn't burn another card in order to get another vote. And the person that's burning a card couldn't burn a second one to gain another vote. This method for gaining a vote, you can only get one of. Now, a vampire with a specific title gets votes. The fact is, there's an entire listing in the rules that you can check up on that certain titles give you certain amounts of votes for political actions. Effectively, when you have enough of that you are granted this many votes for this titled minion. There are other minions that specifically might say on them, they grant you a vote. Regardless if it is a titled minion or a minion that specifically says it gets you a vote or a ballot, you must have them ready and untapped in order to effectively gain the vote from them. You have to have them ready to basically throw their vote in to support you in your referendum, in the way you want to vote again for or against this referendum. Also, the Methuselah that has the edge can burn it to gain one vote. So if I had edge, I could throw it out, burn it in order to gain an extra vote. The Pre-C block votes as a group with a power of 3 votes. We'll talk about the Pre-C block a little bit more, but this is the political side of it. Effectively, the Pre-C block has a sub-referendum that they vote whether they're going to go for the referendum or against the referendum in the subgroup. And once that is complete, then, if it is successfully for it, the 3 votes of the Pre-C block go for it. If it's against it, the 3 votes for the Pre-C block go against it. If they tie, the 3 votes are abstained, and they are not added in regardless. So you can see this is, using the Pre-C block, there are 2 votes to every 1 vote. The last possible way that you can gate votes is certain other cards may grant votes. These other cards, of course, will need to be played by untapped ready minions that may require you to tap them in order to play the cards. Things like action modifiers, reactions, and things like that, that will specifically say they also give you a vote beyond what they normally do. They're also granting you this vote or this ballot to the entire political action. Now you have all the votes, you count them up, you see if it's successful, you see if it fails. Tie is also failure, just like we said. We're done with the political action. And that's it for today. I talked about the political action. I talked about what it means to play a political action and the process that you go over. That there's probably going to be words exchanged between you and the other players to discuss what the plan is for the political action. That maybe I'm playing the referendum and I'm for this and I want it to pass. So we're going to talk about it and I'm going to try to convince everyone else to vote for it. Or maybe I'm another person that really dislikes that and wants to argue against it. And it will be just a little bit like normal politics. That we will each have ways that we possibly will gain votes in this ballot, playing political cards, using other methods, maybe having a titled vampire, which can give us a couple of votes, and we're ready to throw that power we have of politics in one direction or the other, for or against this referendum, until it either passes or fails. And that is the essence of the political action. There, of course, I went over all the details of it, so there are a few more. But the basics are that you're doing something, a referendum, that will be affecting the vampire world in its politics, its laws, its structure, its society, its history a little, its way of doing things. And you're bringing about this decision that will affect everyone in a way. Well, maybe it will, maybe you won't. You never know. Depends on your referendum. But you're going to be ready to call it. Let's see if it succeeds. In the next episode, we're going to dive into the next big thing to talk about. Combat. A very important part of minion versus minion. Battling it out. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's your support for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. Well, regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.